G'day folks, and welcome back to On the Road with John. In this episode we'll be continuing our road trip to Darwin. This is part 2 of leg 1. If you missed out on the first part, there's a link down below that'll show you where you can find it. Anyway, sit back, grab your popcorn and let's go. Day 3 of our road trip. Today we're heading into Coral Bay. We're going to have a look around Coral Bay and then eventually head off into Exmouth. Pretty much just a driving day apart from the stopping into Coral Bay. We did stop and have a look at one of the huge termite mounds. But yeah, late start and early finish into Exmouth. So it's a nice day for driving. In the last episode, you recall, we arrived a bit late to find our campsite at Miaree Bridge, so we continued on and found a neat little spot on the turn off to Exmouth. Today's drive is only about 220 kilometres, but we're going to do a couple of stops before we get into Exmouth. There we go, Tropic of Capricorn, officially now in the tropics. The 26th parallel, or Tropic of Capricorn as it's known, is the southernmost latitude where the sun can be directly overhead. Its northern equivalent is the Tropic of Cancer. The original name for this little area was Maud's Landing. The name came from the landing of the schooner Maud in 1884. It's the earliest recorded European activity in the region. In 1896, a town was reserved and gazetted to protect the site of an existing jetty and government goods shed. In 1915, the town was officially named Maud's Landing. 3 kilometres to the south of Maud's Landing was a very beautiful bay called Bill's Bay. In 1968, a formal settlement began with a hotel, caravan park and service station. The hotel was named the Coral Bay Hotel, probably because of the outstanding coral reefs. Consequently, the settlement became known as Coral Bay. Bill's Bay was named after Ruby May French, affectionately called Auntie Billy. She was the wife of a local station owner who used to look after the local Aboriginal kids. Coral Bay's got an excellent bakery, so let's go and see if it's still as good as it was. Well, the verdict is the beef, cheese and bacon pies are still as good as ever. Really worth going into that place. So what can you do here? Well, just sitting in the warm sun on the beach is a good start. The usual water activities like swimming and snorkelling. And oh yeah, did I mention the Ningaloo reef is right there. So you can do boat tours of that, or even go swimming with the whale sharks if that's what your thing is. You can see why Coral Bay is such a popular place. There isn't really all that much here, just the basics. A shopping centre with a small IGA supermarket, the amazing and busy bakery with a couple of specialty shops. There is another shopping area with takeaway cafe and restaurants just up the street. There's a small variety of accommodation from caravan parks to resorts. But remember, in peak times, space is at a premium, so if you want to come here, book early. There's been some interest in the past to redevelop the area and turn it into a large resort, but there's also been a lot of movement to stop this from happening, because the feeling is if that happens it's going to destroy the area, and I've got to say I actually probably agree with that. The thing is though, with the more tourists that come here, the more facilities they're going to need, so it's only time is going to tell how things are going to pan out. Coral Bay is one place that I'd like to spend more time at again one day. But it's time to move on, more things to see. Here's a bit of useless information that you might need one day at a quiz night. These are the termite mounds that are in this area. Now these termites here, they're not really ones that eat the wood like we have problems with in Perth, that sort of termite. These ones are more the ones that get the like leaf litter, dead leaves and that, and they bury them inside here, which is their food supply. Yeah, I mean, these things are huge. Have a look at this, how big it is. All that dirt is what they have dug out of the ground way down there, right down the bottom. So it must be a massive mound underneath to have this much mud and dirt up the top here. Now, this one I'm guessing is probably dormant. It's had a bit of damage to it and nobody's bothered to repair it. So basically they, when the queen dies, anybody left in there, they will move off and go find another mound to go live in. Eventually a queen somewhere will have a baby who's going to be another queen. Can't have two queens in the one mound. So the new one will nick off with her new boyfriend, and they'll go wandering around trying to find a new place to start a mound. They might come across one of these old ones, and then they'll move into here. It's a ready-made home, and then they'll continue. And then everyone else will come and join them and have their own little ant hive, ant mound, whatever they're called. Just as we start to come into town, a little bit about Exmouth. It was built because of the Americans. The town of Exmouth was constructed in 1964 at the same time as the Harold E. Holt Naval Communications Station to provide support to the base and to house dependent families of the US naval personnel. The US turned over the control of the station to Australia in 1999. Although Exmouth sits way out here in this little point of Western Australia in the middle of nowhere, doesn't mean it doesn't get its place in history. During the Second World War, Exmouth was bombed by the Japanese. There were 2 raids over 2 days. All up, about 10 bombs were dropped, but they all landed in the sea. This was the furthest south that the Japanese had bombed here in WA. Now we're going through Exmouth to a caravan park a couple of kilometres the other side of town. We're going to the Ningaloo Lighthouse holiday park where we're going to stay for a couple of nights. As I said, the park is a little out of town, but you can get fuel here, and they do have a pretty good tavern that does a good meal. While it's a little tight getting a van in, I have seen worse. You are parking on dirt, and they don't have fresh water for you to hook up onto. It's artesian or groundwater, so they will say to fill your onboard water tanks before arriving. I only found that out after I got there. They do have limited fresh water in the park showers and a water tank you can fill bottles from for drinking or cooking. Some sites do have a concrete slab you can set up on, and the park is a decent size. They also have cabins as an option, so there's plenty of chance of getting a place. But again, at peak times it pays to book early. G'day folks, it's day 5 of our road trip and we're in Exmouth. We're here for a couple of nights. Today we're heading out on the Yardie Creek Road. We're going down to Yardie Creek and see if we can do a boat cruise down there. It's supposed to be pretty good. But all the way along here we're travelling along, there's all little tracks heading off to the coast, which presumably puts you right on that Ningaloo reef. Might have a look on the way back out again and see, go down a couple of these tracks and see what they go to. So the weather's starting to get a lot better now. It's not so cold at night time now. The last few nights have been pretty cold. It's getting pretty good up here now. Yardie Creek is about 90 kilometres from Exmouth on the Yardie Creek Road. It does eventually go into a national park, so there are fees to be paid to enter. Once you're in, your first stop should be the info centre, where you can get a map of the area to find out the lay of the land. And the lay of the land looks pretty impressive as you continue to the end of the road. And what's at the end of the road? Well, Yardie Creek, of course. Now my plan was to do a boat tour, but I stuffed it up by not getting tickets before we left Exmouth. But it turns out that the walk is only 1 kilometre, and it's not a hot day. So why not take a stroll along the creek? So that's what we did. The path is well marked, and the first bit is on a good path to the first lookout. The next bit requires a little bit more mountain goat experience, but it's still not too difficult to get across. You can walk into the Yardie Creek Gorge. It's a reasonable track, but it can be a little bit difficult going. If you do it, you've got to make sure you got a hat on, get some sunscreen, take some water with you, and you've got to take some decent footwear. As you can see, I got my rock climbing thongs on today. Seriously, no, you should probably, in the heat of the day, on a hot day, you should probably have some better looking shoes than this. It's only about mid-20s here, so it's not a bad day today, but come in summer and it can get up to 50 degrees and the heat off the rock, thongs just won't do it. wear some proper shoes. Well, now that we've finished doing the walk, I reckon if you're doing it this time of the year and you're able to, the walk isn't bad. I'd do the walk and not worry about the boat. Not to say that the boat's not any good, because you'd get the local knowledge and you'd certainly see it from a different perspective. But yeah, I reckon you're coming up in the middle of summer when it's 50 degrees, do the boat. If you are doing it like around about the July sort of period, where it's sort of mid-20s and you're able to, yeah, I reckon definitely walk it. It's a worthwhile thing to do. As we started making our way back to Exmouth, we tried to find some space in a couple of car parks for the beach. We found this little one that had a bit of room. Well, we couldn't get into Turquoise Bay, so we've stopped into this one. I don't know what this one's called, but Turquoise Bay is a couple of kilometres up that way. I guess the hint here is, if you want to go to some of these places, particularly all the ones that everybody knows about, like Turquoise, is you really need to get in there early. There's a couple of car parks in there and we drove around both and have a look, and there wasn't any room anywhere. Even a couple of idiots are parked in the angle park in the coach bay. So it means if a coach comes in, they can't get in there either. As a coach driver, that annoys me very badly. But from here, you can hear the roar of the ocean as it comes across the top of Ningaloo Reef. Being in a national park, there are also camping areas. This is something I would think you would need to book early for as well. You would need to be self-sufficient as there are no facilities available. As we were leaving the park, we came across this wild dingo. He didn't seem too concerned about us at all. If you ever come across one of these, don't feed them. A few weeks after seeing this one, a mine worker was mauled by two of them in the Pilbara. And about 2 weeks after that, another woman walking her dog just out of Exmouth had a very close encounter with another two dingoes, not far from here. There's a few other things to have a look at while you're around town. First up is the Vlamingh Lighthouse. In the late 1800s, it was well known that navigation up the northwest coast was pretty bad. So a board of inquiry was established in 1907 to work out the best place to put 4 lighthouses. After discussions with masters of large vessels and coastal vessels, Vlamingh had actually missed out. Later in 1907, the Mildura ran aground just off the coast, and it was decided to build a 5th lighthouse here. The lighthouse was eventually completed in 1912 after delays in funding and actually getting the equipment and people up here to build it. The lighthouse operated till 1969 when a light was mounted on Tower 11 at the US Naval Communications site nearby. These days nothing is happening with the lighthouse, but I have read that there is a movement trying to get some funding to open it up to tourism. There is another tower here. It's an old radar tower erected during World War II to protect the nearby US naval base that was here at the time. Underneath the tower is what's left of the sandbags used to protect the area. While the hessian bags have long rotted away, the texture of the bags can still be seen in the sand that has now set like concrete. But the main reason most people come up here for is for the perfect view of the ocean, where you can sometimes see whales passing by on their migration. Our next stop is somewhere about there, I think. This is what's left of the cattle ship Mildura. It was carrying Kimberley cattle south when it hit a reef during a cyclone in 1907. No lives were lost and the wreck has sat here ever since. It was used during World War II by Allied planes for bombing practice. These days, all that is left is a bit of framework and a couple of boilers. You'd be hard pressed driving around Exmouth and not noticing all the aerials here. It's not that somebody's trying to get a good TV signal, but it's actually the reason why Exmouth exists. The communication station provides very low frequency radio transmissions to United States Navy and Royal Australian Navy ships and submarines in the Western Pacific Ocean and Eastern Indian Ocean. With a transmission power of 1 megawatt, it is the most powerful transmission station in the Southern Hemisphere. The VLF aerial array covers 1,000 acres, the largest in the world. There are 13 towers in total, and Tower 0, in the middle, is 387 metres tall. It was the tallest man-made structure in the Southern Hemisphere when it was constructed. The building at the bottom of the tower is 6 stories tall, making it the tallest building in Exmouth. In 1999, Exmouth was almost blown off the map. Cyclone Vance had come through and created a big pile of destruction. Behind me, on those black pylons, there were boats that actually turned upside down and speared over the top of the black poles. My wife at the time, or both of us, we were in the SES at the time, and she came up here afterwards to help clean up the mess that was left behind. They reckon the highest wind recording was somewhere around about 267 kilometres an hour. They're not sure if it got any stronger than that because the wind recorder out at the airport got blown away. Also, the cover of an outboard motor was found halfway up one of the towers at the communications centre. Departing Exmouth today, our first stop is at the Big Prawn. Oh, g'day folks. It's day 6, I think, of our trip, and we've just had a couple of days here in Exmouth, and we're just waiting in the queue. We're waiting to fill our water tanks up because we didn't know at the time, the caravan park we were in, they don't have fresh water on the tap, they have artesian water. So we've used up our water tanks while we'll camp there. So we're just waiting in the queue here. The Shire puts on free water fill just in the old information centre behind the Big Prawn. When you come in, you'll see what I mean. But if you're going out to the Ningaloo Lighthouse, definitely fill your tanks before you get there because you're going to need them. So today's just basically a driving day. We're going to be just moseying along. We're going to camp in a place about probably 30 kilometres maybe before KRAIT called I don't know, I can't remember what it's called. It's one of them 24-hour stops. It's by a creek, Miaree Creek I think it's called. That's where we're planning on stopping for the night. So yep, just a general driving and enjoying the scenery day today. If you're going to be camping out along the coast, you should fill your water tanks here before continuing on. One last stop before we leave the Exmouth area. About 30 kilometres before you get into Exmouth, there's a nice little memorial to a special group mob of blokes from the Second World War that's worth having a look at. During the Second World War, a super secret organisation was called Z Special Unit, otherwise known as Z Force, and they trained around here. They were made up of Australians, British, New Zealand, Dutch, Malays, Canadians, Americans, Indonesians and Chinese. Although they were involved in 182 missions, their most famous mission was to sail a captured Indonesian fishing boat into Singapore harbour and blow up Japanese ships. And all around here is where they did their training. The buildings were severely damaged after the war from a cyclone, so the training camp was closed down. This was the start of what we call today the SAS. We've now turned onto Burkitt Road, which will come out onto the Northwest Coastal Highway south of Nanyatara. It's a shortcut heading north that will save us several hours of travelling time. First time I ever came down this road here, as I came over a hill, in the distance I could see what looked like a log in the middle of the road. And I thought, oh, somebody must have dropped their firewood or something. And as I got closer, I realised the log was actually walking across the road. It was this huge, I don't know what they called, big huge goanna thing it was. Never seen anything like it. It was amazing. We slowed right down to have a good look at it. It didn't seem to be fussed by us. It just plodded along across the road, but from the distance, it looked like a log walking across the road. One of the things that some people find really hard to deal with is trucks on the road, and they find it a bit of a turn off to actually hitting the road. Follow a few simple, not rules, but courtesies, and they're not really that much of a problem to deal with. You're on the road on a holiday, and you've got plenty of time. Them blokes in the trucks, they're working, so time's money to them. So if they get stuck behind somebody going slow and not giving them a chance to get around, it means they might get late to where they're supposed to drop their load off. Now in some cases they cop fines for being late, you know, or worst case, if they get in and the shop's closed or the place they're going to is closed and they have to wait till the next morning before they can do their delivery, that's 10, 12 hours that they just cannot make up. That costs them money. So you can imagine if somebody reached into your pocket and took out $1,000, $1,500, you're not going to be a very happy chappy. Well, it's the same for them. That's why they get aggro getting stuck behind slow vehicles. So how do we solve the problem? CB radios is a good start. I think everybody should have one in their vehicle. You see a truck coming up behind you, don't slow down because he loses his momentum. Give him a call and let him know that you can see him coming, and when he's ready to come around, you'll back off to make it easy for him. Keep up to your speed, 90, 95, whatever you can do. The closer to the 100, the better, because then he's doing that speed. When he's ready to pass, he can pull out, you take your foot off the accelerator and drop back, and then he can drop straight back in again, and it's so much easier for them, and then they can get along their merry way. You don't have to feel intimidated because they're up your backside. Everybody's happy. So it's all about courtesy. In some states, if you've got a line of traffic behind you, regardless of what speed you're doing, you will get a fine for obstructing traffic. So if you've got a few cars behind you, pull over to the side of the road, let them through, and then carry on again as you were going. It's all about a little bit of courtesy, that's all, and everybody's happy and you can enjoy the trip. And I might add, not every truck driver is an arsehole either. A couple of them sure are, but a lot of them are pretty friendly. They give you a wave when you go down the road, so Yeah, don't think that because one gives you a hard time, they're all going to give you a hard time. True to form, we're arriving at where we want to camp for the night late. It's just the standard main roads rest area. There were a fair few vans already here, and although it doesn't look like it, I reckon we would have had a bit of trouble mucking around trying to get the van level. So we decided to camp on the entrance. Now you might think that being near the road would be rather noisy, but to be honest, I reckon I might have heard 2 or 3 trucks all night. You can go swimming in the creek, which might be good on a hot day, but I don't know whether the water would be here all year round. Well, that's it for this video. Join us next time when we'll try and feed a dog. We check out a pretty lively ghost town, have a look at the loading of deconstructed cars, and look for some cables on a beach in Broome. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss the next upload. So till next time, happy travels.